Hello and welcome to what I'm going to call my New Year strategy call. This is not about setting New Year's resolutions. What this is about is sharing with you 3 super important strategies that I promise you, if you introduce into your life this year, will transform this coming year for you. Because you know I'm all about brain health. I am all about that incredible thing that you have in your head, that thing that is behind your eyes and between your ears. Because if I was to ask you, what is your most precious asset? What would you say? Would you say it's your brain? I'm not sure that you would, but I want you to start to think about your brain as your most precious asset, because it is the thing that brings us joy. It is the thing that helps us live our lives every day. It's the thing that keeps our memories safe. It's the things that allow us to enjoy good food, time with friends, time out in nature. So why wouldn't you look after it? And if you don't know how to look after it, don't worry. That's what I'm here for. So if you like this video, remember to subscribe, remember to like, and please share it with whoever you know needs to hear this message today. I do have some notes. So if you see me looking down, it's just because I've got notes here and I don't want to forget anything that's from this talk, which is going to be super, super important for you. So I am a total brain nerd. I love talking about the brain. I love talking about brain health. I love talking about how you can look after your brain health. And when I say the word nerd, to me, what nerd stands for is never ending research and discovery, because we are learning stuff about the brain all the time, and I'm going to bring to you the latest strategies, scientific research, whatever you need to know to make sure that your brain stays in absolute tip-top condition. So 3 things I'm going to talk about today. The first thing is energy management. Then I'm going to talk about emotional regulation. And then I'm going to talk about the state triangle, which is something that I've learned through a lot of the work I've done with Tony Robbins and the amazing work that he does. So what's really going to start off talking about today, as I say, is energy management. Because when I'm talking with my clients, and the thing that I hear such a lot is, I don't have time. I don't have time to look after myself. I don't have time to look after my health. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to eat healthily. I just don't have time. And what I want you to think about today is less about putting tasks to different times. I want you to think about your energy, because we all have the same 24 hours. The Richard Bransons of this world, the Oprah Winfreys of this world, we all have the same 24 hours. So how come some people seem to get so much done in their 24 hours, and maybe you and I are struggling to get even half, maybe a quarter of our to-do list done? And what these high achievers know is it's not about time management, it's about energy management. And let me explain to you what I mean about time management. So time management is where we allot a certain task to a certain time. Energy management is when we decide what part of the day we need to do a certain task in that relates to the amount of energy that we have at that time. So for example, I've studied this in me, because I won't teach you stuff, I won't tell you stuff that I haven't tried myself. So in terms of energy management, I've looked at my day and I've thought about, when am I the most alert? When do I feel my brain is working the best? When do I have the most energy? And I know my best time's between 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if I have something important to do, if I've got something I need to achieve, if I've got a conversation that I need to have, maybe I've got some tricky stuff to do in my business, that's the time when I will do it. After about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so 3 till 5:30, it's not my best time. My energy dips. I don't feel quite so enthusiastic about the day. I can still get stuff done. My brain still functions, but I know that at that time of the day, it's not the best time for me to be making the decisions that matter, to be doing the things that I might struggle with. I wouldn't do a maths thing, wouldn't do my accounts at that time of day, because I know from having looked at myself, that's not my best time. So you've heard me say this before, you'll hear me say this a lot, we can't manage what we don't measure. So I want you to go away and I want you to measure your energy. Look at it throughout the day. When do you feel the most energetic? Are you a morning person like me? Do you like to get up, get stuff done, and by about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're starting just to, lose it a little bit? Or do you struggle with that first part of the day? And are you better after midday? Or are you better working into the evening? Because you'll find those conversations that you need to have, that tricky stuff that you need to do, you're better doing it when you have that energy. And that's what I mean about energy management rather than time management. Because we all think we don't have enough time, and many of us don't have enough time, but often it's because we are doing things that are important or that need to get done when we don't have the energy to do it. So what does that lead to? That leads to us not doing it very well. That leads to us getting stressed about it. That leads to us feeling a bit overwhelmed often, or it actually can leave us feeling quite frustrated because we're not getting it done. What does that lead to? It's that S word that you hear me talk about a lot, stress. And if you've heard any of my talks before, stress, chronic stress is super, super damaging to our brains. So I'm always teaching my clients, I'm always talking in these talks about what can we do to reduce the stress in your life. This is the first thing I want you to think about. How are you going to manage your energy throughout the day so you get the stuff done when is best for you? And I promise you, if you're aware of that time, because we all have these times during the day, don't we? You know, I'm sure by now, even if as I've said this, you're thinking, oh, do you know what? Yes, that's the time of day when I don't feel quite so energetic. And maybe that's a time when you reach for a bit of caffeine, a biscuit, because you want that energy to come back up again. So at those times, those are the times when you need to be doing something. If you can, I know it's not always possible for everybody, but if you can, at those times, do something that doesn't require quite so much of your tip-top brain to be working. I hope that makes sense. So the first thing is energy management rather than time management. This has a big impact as well on what I call emotional regulation, and I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later on. But by managing your energy instead of your time, you make sure you're doing your best work when emotionally you're in the best place. And that helps you to regulate your emotions because, as you just heard me say, that keeps your stress levels down. And we are all about keeping the stress levels down. It benefits your brain, that beautiful thing you have behind your eyes and between your ears, because it reduces your mental fatigue and your stress. So when you're working according to your energy levels, you're going to protect your brain from overexertion, which helps you maintain what I call cognitive function, which is all the things that go on in your brain effectively. And it keeps you emotionally balanced over time. Because as I said, stress is one of the biggest issues in today's society. It's reported that between, I think it's now 80 to 90% of GP visits are due to something related to stress, to chronic stress, whether it's heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancers, high blood pressure, any kind of mental health issues, and even dementia and Alzheimer's. 80 to 90%. So doesn't it make sense to you then that if we reduce this stress, we're not going to have to bother our GP, we're not going to have to worry so much about life in general, and we can concentrate more on what actually matters to us. So when I'm talking about emotional regulation, which is the other thing that I wanted to talk with you about, do you know what I mean by emotional regulation? So it's the ability to monitor, to evaluate, and to modify our emotional reactions in a way that's appropriate and effective for whatever it is that we're trying to do. So it involves being aware of your emotions. So that's why it links in so nicely with energy management, because I'm encouraging you to think about your energy, and I'm also encouraging you to think about how you feel during the day. So that's what I'm talking about, emotional regulation. So it helps you make decisions better, because wouldn't you agree? If your emotions are not in a good place, we don't make decisions properly, do we? We don't have the right conversations. I would argue we don't reach for the right types of food or drink that actually is going to nurture and nourish our body rather than just give it instant energy. And that's because our minds are so overwhelmed. And by keeping our emotions more regular, we make better decisions. We don't maybe have that conversation in a way that's more negative, and we have a better outlook on life. All those things will lead to it's that S word again, will lead to that S level coming down, stress levels coming down, better for your brain, better for your heart, better for your body in total. So that's when I'm talking about emotional regulation. If we struggle with maintaining our emotions, it often leads to increased stress, and chronic stress over time, super harmful for our brains. And it can impact memory, it can impact decision making and overall well-being. So there's another good reason for keeping our stress levels down. On the positive side, because if you know me, you know let me get this right, I'm a cup half full person rather than a cup half empty person. Effective emotional regulation really enhances brain health by promoting what we call neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change in response to certain activities that take place. And our brain now can do that throughout life. There's been some incredible research done. So our brain can do that throughout life. It's our brain's ability to adapt and to reorganize itself. Because when I was doing my training all those years ago, I was taught your brain is fixed. You reach a certain age, you've got the right amount of neurons, which are the connections in your brains. It doesn't change. The only thing that happens is you're going to lose more brain cells as you get older. Now, yes, you do lose brain cells as you get older, but you can change that. You can change that by doing certain things that, I teach in other of my masterclasses. You can do things to just so look after that incredible brain that's in there. Okay, so we know that the brain can change, and we know that having more emotional regulation actually changes your brain for the better. And who doesn't want that? The final point about emotional regulation is talking about the chemicals and the emotions that are released. So an emotion is basically, it's a chemical that is released in your body, which makes your body behave, react in a certain way. And hormones, the stress hormones, if they are, I know I keep saying that S word, but the stress hormones, if they are chronically being produced by our body, not only do we eventually run out of the capacity to do that, those stress hormones are very damaging for our brain, and I don't want you to be doing anything that's going to be damaging your brain. So if we have the right amount of emotional regulation, we're going to have the right amount of chemicals going through our body. We're going to have the right amount of chemicals to keep us at a good level. So, first action for today. I want you to monitor your energy throughout the day. I want you to monitor your energy throughout the day. I want you to be aware of when your energy spikes and when it drops. You might well find there's more than one cycle throughout the day. That's fine. Everybody is unique and individual. So when do you find you have the most energy, and when do you find you have the least energy? Note it down. That's what your phones are really useful for. Note down when you feel the most energized and when you feel the least energized. And then if you can, and I realize in some work situations it might not always be possible, but when can you do your most important work? When you're most energized, when your brain's working the best. Have a think about that. I'll write that down and just monitor that. Monitor your energy levels for the next week to 10 days. And you'll begin to see a pattern. We can't manage what we don't measure. So measure your energy levels. So I've covered the first 2 points. I've covered energy management and emotional regulation. And now the third one I want to talk to you about is what we call the state triangle. Now, this is something that I've learned from the great Tony Robbins, and I make no apologies for stealing it from him. I'm sure he'd be delighted to know that I'm teaching his teachings. So what I want you to do is I want you to get a blank piece of paper, just a blank piece of paper, and on it, I want you to draw a triangle. Now, I know that's backwards. most likely. But I want you to draw a big triangle like that. And in the centre, I want you to write the word state. So what do I mean by state? So by state, I mean how you are. So the state triangle is a very simple, but a very effective model that helps us to understand our behaviour, human behaviour. It serves, if you like, as a foundational tool to influence and to break through any barriers that you might be having, whether those are physical barriers, mental barriers, emotional barriers, spiritual barriers, to break through those various states. So at its core, the state triangle is about mastering how we experience life, because you can change how you experience life. And it shapes the lens, if you like, of how we're looking through life. And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean about this when I've talked through the state triangle with you. So it helps us to manage our emotional state. It helps to manage our physical state. It shapes the lens through which we see the world and how we interact with the world and how we interact with other people. So there's 3 parts to it, obviously. Triangle has 3 sides. So they each interact with each other. Those 3 sides are physiology, language, and focus. I'm going to explain all of those, so don't worry. But the 3 elements are very interconnected, and they play a really critical role in determining our emotional state at any given moment. And therefore, they affect the decisions we make, the actions that we take, the words we say, the things we do. Okay, so I'm going to start off by talking about physiology. So when I'm talking about physiology, I want you to write along the bottom, I've got my trusty Sharpie here, I want you to write the words physiology. Physiology. Okay, physiology. That's what we're writing along the bottom. Physiology. So physiology is recognising that our physical state, how we're standing, how we're sitting, how we're behaving, can really impact our emotions and our actions, and changing the way we breathe, changing our posture, even what's happening here in our face can really dramatically affect our levels of energy and our mental clarity. So if you're thinking about physiology, we want to think about the link between your body and your brain. Who hasn't found that if you're feeling a bit down, you go for a walk, you feel better? Or a piece of music comes on the radio or on the TV and you find yourself dancing around your kitchen, because movement changes our state, doesn't it? So movement, which is part of physiology, changes your state. And if you think about then how you breathe, you know, if you breathe differently, if you're doing lots of little shallow breaths, that's different than if you're taking in a really deep breath and really expanding those lungs. So when we're stressed, it's that S word again, when we're stressed, it's very common for us to not breathe as well, to kind of take shallower breaths, to hold our chest in, which can make us increase our feelings of anxiety, because our brain is saying we're not breathing properly, this isn't good. So if you take deep, intentional breaths, that sends a message back to your brain to say, you're okay, you're safe, we don't need to worry, we don't need to release any more stress hormone. So just by breathing differently, by using your body differently, you can impact how you feel. And posture is really important. There was a study done at Harvard University which looked at stress hormone levels and testosterone levels when people adopted the Superman pose. I'm going to call it the Superwoman pose. It's where you stand chest up, shoulders back, chin up, in that kind of, you know, Superman, Superwoman pose where you're like that. And they found if you stand like that for 2 minutes, it reduces your cortisol, which is one of your stress hormones, and it increases your testosterone. So if you stand in that posture, if you've got to do something that is a bit challenging, or you don't want to do, or you've got to have a difficult conversation with your boss, 2 minutes standing like that will increase your testosterone and decrease your cortisol. Very important. And the mind-body connection, as I said before, is very powerful. So if I was to say to you, stand like somebody who's depressed, you know, you'd stand probably head down, shoulders down, there's that kind of posture. If I say, stand like someone who's just won the lottery, you'd be up here, wouldn't you? You'd be out, you'd be joyful. So how you hold your body has a very big impact on what's going on in here. So you can reverse often what's going on in here by changing your physiology, by changing how you're standing. Really, really important, really easy to do. So again, if you know that you've got something that you're going to find challenging, you've got to have that conversation, you've got to do that thing you don't really want to do, maybe you've got to phone somebody that you don't really want to phone, use this superwoman posture with the chin up, shoulders back, chest up, to really give yourself a quick testosterone boost and a quick reduction in your cortisol levels, your stress hormone levels. So then we want to look at the second side of the triangle, which is language. So I'm going to write along the side, language, and I would ask that you do the same. So language along the side. So words have power, don't they? And language plays a really pivotal role in this state triangle, because language is more than just the words, isn't it? It encompasses the vocabulary that we use to express ourselves. And also it's the tone that we use when we're talking, even maybe the intentional dialogue, the intentional tone that we say things with. So words shape reality. Put my pen down there. So the words that we choose can be really powerful. They frame our experiences and they often influence how we interpret the world around us. So if you consider the difference between saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm just overwhelmed, against, I'm learning to manage many tasks. So it's the same thing. You've still got a lot going on, but I'm overwhelmed compared to the I'm managing many tasks can be really powerful. If you are constantly hearing yourself saying things negatively, that is going to impact how your brain feels, because your subconscious mind is always on the lookout for, let me pop that down, always on the lookout for the negative side. Our brain is actually wired to look for the negative. It's part of our survival mechanism. So if you are always being negative, that's not going to be a good way to be living your life. So thinking about the words you're saying, the words that you are linking to certain situations, environments, really, really powerful. So I was working with a client who used to say to me, you know, I say such really horrible things to myself. I'm really hard on myself. And I hear myself shouting at myself. And she gave me the example where she had spilt a pint of milk accidentally. And she was lambasting herself. She was swearing at herself. She was saying, you know, what an idiot. Why do you do that? Why do you do such stupid things? And because she'd been working with me, she suddenly went, oh, hang on a minute. That's not what I need to be saying. That is not the right words for me to be saying. That's not the right emotions for me to be hearing all the time. So she changed the language that she was using. And, you know, okay, it happens, accidents happen, but the words that we use, how we respond to that, the words that we hear ourselves say, can be really powerful in controlling it. Again, that reaction that my client had, what do you think that did to her stress levels? Took it higher again. And you know, I'm all about reducing the stress so that we look after that beautiful brain that is in your head. So, as well as monitoring your energy, I want you to monitor the language that you're hearing yourself say all the time. If the language that you're hearing yourself say is really negative and really, you know, anti you, think about, is that really how I want to spend my life? Is that really how I want to think about myself? And try and change those words to more powerful words. And I'm often giving my clients little hints and tips, ways to change how they do things. Because when I hear them going down that negative route, or it's a negative belief or a limiting belief that they're coming out with, I show them ways that they can change that so that they're not always saying those negative things. And then finally, we want to be talking about the final side of the triangle, which is focus. So I'm going to write focus down. So focus, and there we have our state triangle. So we've got physiology, language, and focus. So focus means, what are we paying attention to at any given moment? Tony Robbins has this great saying, focus goes where energy flows. So whatever you are concentrating on, wherever your energy is, wherever your focus is, that's where things are going to go. So, stands to reason, if you are always being negative, if you are always looking for the negatives in life, that's where you're going to go. Negatives, they're always there. There's always bad things happening. There's always things that we can be negative about, but the positives are there too. So if we are always, I'm not saying don't be aware of the negatives, I'm saying be aware of them, but be aware of the positives in life as well. Because two people can have a very different view on something, can't they? Someone might think something's very negative, you might think it's not so negative. So thinking about how can you take yourself away from constantly going down that negative route to the more positive route. So that's being more positive against being negative. And as I've said earlier, our brain is wired for negativity. It's part of our survival strategy. So don't beat yourself up if, when you start to be aware of this, you do find yourself always going down the negative route. Managing, measuring, that's what we're doing, okay? This is not about beating ourselves up. So thinking about when you hear yourself say that negative phrase, how can you twist it round to being more positive? One really useful way of doing this, when you start to be more negative, and it's super simple, but it's super powerful and it's properly science-backed, is the power of gratitude. And my clients know, and if you've heard me talk before, I talk about this all the time because it is so powerful and it's so simple. You can't be sad when you're grateful. You can't be upset when you're grateful. Your brain can't compute those two things at the same time. So shifting towards gratitude, living an attitude of gratitude, regularly practicing gratitude, writing it down, being thankful for what you have, even the little things that you have, massively shifts your focus. So celebrate what you have. Celebrate what's good for you rather than what's maybe not working for you. And how can these points be useful for you? Because I always like to finish my masterclasses and any talk that I do, making it relevant for you. So what is it that you want to achieve? Is it some kind of goal that you're wanting to do as we step forward into the year? Is it being happier? Is it being healthier? You know, what do you want to achieve? If you start by thinking about these three things we've talked about today, managing your energy, not so much managing your time, but managing your energy, which will lead to you having more emotional regulation, which will lead you to thinking about how I am in my state, how am I feeling in my state, and how can that reflect through my physiology, my body, my language, and my focus. So I want you to go away and have a think about those three things and think about how over the next week to 10 days, how can you measure those things? How can you manage those things? Because mastering focus and mastering these things is about investing in reducing your mental stress, because that's what I really want you to think about today. Reducing your mental stress, having a bit more time in your life. And by directing your focus towards more positive outcomes and positive potentials, you're going to be creating a better environment for you, for your own emotional well-being. And focus, it's more than just a tool. It's a gateway to create the life that you want. If you want that thing, focus on getting that thing, not on all the reasons why you can't achieve it. So just wrapping up today, just going over those three things that we've looked at. Your energy management, so looking at when throughout the day you feel most energized. Emotional regulation, trying to be more aware of your emotions on a daily basis so that you can reduce that amount of stress that you're feeling. And then finally, looking at your state triangle. How is your physiology? How is your language? And how is your focus? And by looking at those three things, I'm really optimistic this is going to be a great year for you.